Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Coach Steve Show podcast. Today, sitting down with me was gracious enough to come on Coach Hodgin. He is the OC at Shenandoah University. Coach, thanks for being here. I really appreciate you coming on here.
Oh, Coach, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you asking me.
Yeah, you're an air raid guy, so I said yes. That right there, that drew me in. So before we dive into all of that, I'm curious of how did you end up at Shenandoah? Like, what made you coach? What led you to be there where you are today?
Probably took a little bit of a non-traditional route to get to Shenandoah. Going back many years, I grew up in the home of a high school coach. I really didn't know there was any other profession in the world. And so when it came time to make a college decision, where to go to school was a lot more challenging than what I was going to major in. It was going to be an education major. I was going to teach and coach. As my career started, I was at the high school level as an assistant for about a dozen years, and then had an opportunity to be a head coach at the high school level. And then after a handful of seasons there, I got an unexpected call from Mike Dunleavy, who at the time was the head coach at Averett University in Danville, Virginia, and asked me to come join his staff. I'd always been a little bit curious as to the differences between the high school level and the college level. I took the leap of faith and was with him for a single season. From there, I went to be the offensive coordinator at Emory and Henry, which is in Southwest Virginia in our conference. And then after 2 seasons there, there was a change in the head coaching position at Shenandoah, and Coach Yoder, who came from Hobart in New York, when he got named the head coach, our conversations began quickly, and he offered me an opportunity to come to Shenandoah to run his offense.
What did you find the biggest difference was when you went from high school to college? Like, was there any like a huge adjustment, or was it just like, man, I do football now 24/7. I don't have to worry about anything else?
I think the trade-off, and I've had, numerous guys talk to me throughout the years about the difference. I think the number one difference is you're either teaching classes or you're recruiting, and that's the trade-off there. So, I don't teach classes in season now. I do teach in the off season in the spring semester, but in season, it is an awful lot of football, with film study and game prep, which I'm sure we don't do any more than anybody else at any level does. But then you kind of cloudy the water with, next year's class or the class from 2 years from now. So the recruiting calendar is just a circle. There is no beginning and end to it. And so in season, I probably spend 40% of my time, watching film of guys that we either will choose to recruit or decide not to. And, with film evaluation of guys either in the next class or 2 classes away.
How much did COVID affect your guys' recruiting for you guys? I know some schools weren't, some it did, and, it's kind of different everywhere.
I think the major effect that we felt was not so much on our campus. I thought our university, beginning with the top of our administration, did an unbelievable job in being out in front of the challenges. We were actually the spring of 20, we shut down in the middle of March like everybody else. We were virtual for the rest of that semester. But for the 2021 school year, we were in person learning the whole year on campus. So the challenges that we found in recruiting were that most of the high schools in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States were virtual. So it was, school visits were out. That was not a possibility to go see a high school coach or a potential recruit in the school. Obviously in the state of Virginia, where a lot of our recruiting comes from. They did not play in the fall, so we didn't get for the incoming freshmen that we're going to welcome in about 3 weeks. We did not get to see any of them play in the fall because they didn't play. They had an abbreviated spring schedule. We chose to go the exact same route, and just because it was all kind of mashed in there together in a handful of weeks as opposed to spread out over 10 or 12 weeks, we did not see our recruits play live nearly as much as we would in a normal cycle of recruiting.
Yeah, some people, I think everybody's in the same boat, but there were some that got to go, but it was weird. Some played in the fall, some played in the spring. So I know that affected a lot of people. And then some were coaching in the spring while high schools are playing in the spring. So like, how can we recruit this? So it was a lot of texting, a lot of social media, a lot of phone calls. Sure. Is what they were telling me.
Yep. That was it. And there were, that had a part of my recruiting area is I have the state of North Carolina. In North Carolina, the public schools didn't play in the fall, but the private schools did. And there were, a fair number of North Carolina private school kids that I was recruiting, but the fact they were playing, they were not allowing fans. And so I still couldn't go see them play live. I could watch the live stream of it, but, still could not be in the stands, even though we were not playing. And I had time and opportunity to make those trips. But, just the limitations that we were all on, prevented that.
Yeah, well, now hopefully it's back to normal. There's rumors we're going to go back, but I hope not. I think we'll all lose our minds.
I think we are getting closer to normal, at least through the lens that I see things. And I'm actually welcoming that and looking forward to coaching this fall without a mask and, seeing our guys again. So that'll just, it's something to look forward to. And again, we're reporting here, in about 3.5 weeks. So, we're getting excited.
I'm just glad to know what players and students look like. I just saw their eyes for the past year.
Exactly.
And then they told us they had to wear a mask underneath their face mask, and we said so they have to have a mouthpiece, the mask, and that. Well, then they changed it to that Velcro one that went over the face mask. And I keep telling people that's the dumbest thing because it just covers the face mask. And then what happens during the game comes off.
Well, somebody made an awful lot of money off of that idea.
Well, that's the second point was I got mad at it because how dumb it was. And I said, but wait a minute. I could have made a lot of money if I came up with it.
Exactly.
The mask thing, they made a lot of money off that. They made a lot of money off of. And the gaiters, they had the one that attached to the face mask. I was like, well, I'm in the wrong business. That was so dumb. Did you guys get to play? Did you guys play in the spring or the fall?
We did. We played in the spring. We played a 5-game schedule in the spring.
And how'd that go for you guys? Was it like, if it's like us, the restrictions were like mask, 3 feet on the sideline, which is hard to deal with to stay 3 feet apart. But
the only thing I think that would have been more challenging or worse was not playing. Playing was better than not playing. But the hoops we had to jump through, it was just unbelievable from a preparation standpoint. We typically have a good idea of who's going to have a conflict with practice because of their class schedule. But then you start, we're testing every week and you put a game plan together and then all of a sudden a key element of your game plan tests positive or he is quarantined for contact tracing. And then, it was not that unusual for us to be Thursday night after practice on Thursday, scrambling to try to patch holes in a plan that, that was going to have to be different than we envisioned. So, again, it was still much better than not playing, but I'm looking forward to us getting back to what I remember to be normal.
Yeah, as normal as we can be, which is what it looks like. Yeah. High school wise, we had to become more simple almost. We had to really simplify what we were doing.
Yep.
Um, Sometimes this sounds bad. Some kids don't get as much reps as they maybe should have. And like you said, then we realized we have to, because if a kid's out sick or doesn't show up or something, God forbid, not that they test positive, but if they go home and find out their parents did and they got to stay home,
Right.
we lose something. So that's what we did at the high school level. But for us, we only had like 2 weeks of practice, and that was it until the first game. So we sacrificed a lot of technique for scheme,
Yep.
which keeps me up at night that I chose to do that. So I know colleges, you probably had way more time for drills. We did not. We were so worried about scheme that we sacrificed a lot of technique. Now I've overcompensated this summer of breaking everything down as simplest form that I can. Like I literally put cones out for their feet to know where to go. Like that's how overcompensated I became.
Yep.
But that's what COVID did. I had to find a positive. Like it made me more simple. The Zoom, I hate Zoom, but I also like it because it makes things easy. But yeah, that was tough. So how did you find your way into the air raid offense? Like what kind, we all get drawn to an offense. That's the big debate of wing tee offense. And like when
Sure.
people battle, I'm like, well, that's because you're drawn to the wing tee, you're drawn to the spread, you're drawn to the air raid. What kind of made you say, okay, this air raid offense is for me? This is what I will call if I ever call plays.
It probably started as a college player. I played at Carson Newman in East Tennessee. We were a split back veer team. I was a quarterback, and running the split back veer, which is an incredibly difficult offense to defend, I physically got beat all to heck. And just, once I finished playing and I started coaching, although I had a really good understanding of the veer, I couldn't see putting anyone else through what I had gone through. And so the very first year I was coaching, we read a book by Tiger Ellison and with the Lonesome Polecat, and we kind of dillied in the run and shoot. We had no idea what we were doing, but that's what we attempted to do. We had mediocre results. And so when the season was over, I went to the head coach that I was working for, and I said, can I go learn the run and shoot? And with his blessing, over that spring, that summer, and then for the 3 following springs and summers, I visited the University of Houston with Jack Pardee was the head coach then, and John Jenkins was the offensive coordinator. When I started my visits down there, then Coach Jenkins became the head coach. But I actually learned the run and shoot from those guys, and that's where it all started for me. And we were kind of stayed with the run and shoot philosophy there for a good number of years. And then 2009, maybe 2008, I had a chance to spend a week with Mike Leach down at Texas Tech. And that is kind of when the light bulb went off. And I sift out all the run and shoot stuff and converted it all to air raids, thoughts and teachings. And so since, I guess that was the spring of 2009. So ever since, no, 2008, I'm sorry. And so ever since then, beginning with the fall of 2008, I've been exclusively air raid ever since.
People that have been lucky enough to go watch a Mike Leach spring practice, always I see them post or I'll ask about it, and they say, I've never felt more overcomplicated about what I do until I go watch that and how simple he is with it. And I'm like, how can you get more simple than what I read? And they go, Steve, it's actually more simple than you think of how he does it. And that's why high school coaches are kind of swinging to it, because how easy it is to install and run. Is that true, how easy he does it at practice? Like it's so simple?
I think from a fundamental standpoint, yes. I think where it gets, what we're experiencing now is we've been very successful. And So as we start our week of preparation on a Sunday, and we're looking at the next opponent, and we in our league we exchange everything. So, if it's game 7, I've got 6 games of them to look at. We don't ever get defended the way they've defended anybody else prior to our game, and so it's like the defense of the week in our game, and so our approach is. What we've done at our approach is as we're preparing for any opponent, it's a very broad approach, and it's, and we don't talk about the opponent. We talk about the measure is against our own potential. And so we're going to have a cover 2 segment. We're going to have a cover 3 segment. We're going to have a quarter segment. We're going to have a man under segment. We're going to have a cover 0 segment. We're going to cover all the things that we may or may not get on any given Saturday, because what it boils down to is in-game adjustments. And we're going to have our plan A is kind of the terminology I use. Our plan A going into any one game is probably the simplest you've ever seen. I say that confidently. And our players, especially the returners, know that after the first series, that plan A is we're going to probably get to plan B or plan C or plan D after the first series. Just, once we discover what their point of emphasis are and what it is they're trying to take away from us. So, yes, fundamentally with the installation, what we teach, it's really simple. But it's you can run the same play against cover 3, cover 2, or you get some kind of man under scheme, and it doesn't look the same because you have route adjustments based off the coverage. And so, I think where the complexity comes in, and that's not the right word, but where it gets away from that ultra simplicity is when you have route adjustments, off of coverage. And so, we've got to spend a lot of time making sure that we've got 11 guys where they're supposed to be based off of the front we're getting, the pressure we're getting, and the coverage we're getting.
Yes. Do you guys incorporate any of the run and shoot with it like I'm seeing some do, or is it just pure air raid? Because I don't want to put words in Coach Mummy's mouth. I've seen where he's added a choice route on his mesh and stuff. Will you guys dabble in that, or is it just the simple air raid that we all see from Mike Leach?
Open field, we are exclusively air raid. Okay. I will pull some run and shoot principles once we get inside the whatever yard line the defense gets into their goal line approach. I mean, it may be the 7 or it may be the 5 or maybe it's inside the 5. We've got some run and shoot concepts that will use once you get into your goal line defense.
Yeah. That stuff marries pretty well together, I think, once you teach them how to read stuff. And
yes.
And it's a nice little wrinkle, like you said. If you run this play out of 2x10 and you just do that one different thing, it's going to look different. When you go 3x1, it just looks completely different and makes them practice longer. That defense is like, well, now they're going to do this. So how do we combat that? So that's why I like it. Now, I'm an offensive line coach, so I like to run the ball, but I love air raid pass concepts. And seeing just one of the routes be a run and shoot. Run and shoot, I still don't know everything because they keep that thing locked. Right. That thing is locked. And anytime I ask a run and shoot guy, they go, oh, I can't tell you. Or it's, I could, but then I'd have to kill you because then I'll get kicked out of the club. That's why I like the air raid guys. They can tell me anything. They'll let me know.
It's not X's and O's. It's Jimmy's and Joe's.
Yes, that's what they tell me. Or they just won't tell me the pass protection. That's the big secret of them all, of run and shoot. They will not give that up. Will you ever dabble in like H-back stuff and hand down tight ends, or is it strictly like spread? Because I talked to the OC at St. Xavier University up here in the high school. Me and him had a good conversation. He goes, Steve, define spread offense. And I said, well, our school will go 2x2, 3x1. They'll bring a hand down tight end. He goes, that's not spread anymore. He's like, in his world, that's not spread anymore. You're bringing a pro set in. Mm-hmm. So will you ever go to a pro set and dabble in that, or is it just strictly We're going to spread the field out.
I will play with 11 personnel. Play with the tight end with 3 wides. The one thing I think that makes us a little bit unique is only under special circumstances will I ever get in 2 backs. Okay, so I'm almost exclusively either 1 back or empty, but I will play with 1, and we have played with 2 tight ends at a time, especially against the tight front. We'll get in 2 tight ends against the tight front. But by changing the personnel groupings, it does not affect what we are capable of doing. It may tilt what we're most likely to do, but we can still run anything from any of our sets, any of our personnel groupings.
I actually like seeing mesh out of a hand down tight end to come underneath. I feel like that works well.
It seems like to me that when you attach a guy beside the tackle you release him, he is probably the most likely to get lost within the coverage. The defense kind of has a tendency to lose sight of him. And so, whether it's mesh or shallow or cross or, really anything, and tight end up the seam seems to go scot-free quite often too. So I do think there's some advantages to that. I think the challenge that we have is that's probably the most difficult player to find in the recruiting process. Mm-hmm. The guys that are really good at it, are getting scholarshiped up, by either the big boys or the FCS schools, and and certainly the Division IIs are after those guys as well. But it just because high school offenses seem to be getting, over the last 10 years have gotten more in line with what we do or what we do philosophically. There are fewer and fewer teams playing with a true tight end or a fullback for that matter. And so those guys there just don't seem to be enough of those guys when you get into the recruiting process to go around.
I don't know if people know what a fullback is anymore. I don't know if they know what that is anymore. We were blessed in the spring. We had like a 6'2" or 6'3" tight end that could put his hand in the dirt. And we walked in, and I was like, he's a hand-down tight end. And he could line up wide. I haven't seen that in a while. And he's a rugby player, too. So we're like, yep, that's the guy. And that's a good point. You don't see that. But I do think football's making a circle. More and more high schools, at least, are going back to, like, buck sweep runs. And I feel like football's going to make a full circle in high school. Like, it's going to come back around where they're going to run belly and buck sweep and stuff because defenses are now geared towards let's stop the RPOs, let's stop the passing. So what do? We're like, well, let's run the ball. So I feel like football's going to – you might start finding them here soon. The tight ends may come back because we're starting to – I know for me, we're starting to come back around. Like pin and pull and all this stuff. We're coming full circle.
Well, that would be great as far as – helping us out in recruiting, just having, more of a group to choose from or, spread that group out over more schools. So
I think you will. I think here in a couple of years, you're going to see more tight ends. That's just me. I could be wrong. I'm a nobody high school coach, but I think that's what will happen. Since you are air raid, I'm going to ask the question that everybody probably asks. Do you run the ball? That's probably their question of like, will you ever run the ball? Like, how Mummy and Mike Leach don't. I know high school coaches that are air raid, they won't run it. That's a quarterback decision. They will not call a run play. You guys still line up and run the ball if the box presents itself?
Absolutely. And so, yes, I would tell you that we are air raid based. But what I will tell you that's even bigger than that, winning trumps everything.
Right.
And if we're not blessed with a quarterback that can spin it 60 times and give us a great chance to win, that's not what we're going to do. We may line up in the same formations, but we're not going to throw it to say we throw it or, it's just I'm going to get retained in my position based on the number of times we win or the number of times we score. And so we're going to be very production based. And so when our guys report to camp, the biggest challenge we're going to have as a staff this year, as we do every year, is how quickly can we discover what this group of guys is really good at doing. Now, 2018, we led all of college football in throwing, passing yardage per game. Mike Leach's Washington State team was the second ranked team in that category. But I also coached a guy that was a finalist for the Gallardi Award. He goes to camp with the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, he was special. And that was his senior year. And he was, by the way, it was his fourth year starting for us. So we don't get that set of circumstances, very often. Now we'll still be effective throwing. But, you go back, his name is Hayden Balsman. When Hayden was a freshman, we probably threw it, just going off of memory now, we're probably in the 42, 45 times a game, but probably 2/3 of those were 3-step passes. We were in quick game. Mm-hmm. And as Hayden developed and as he got more comfortable with what we were doing, and we were also playing with 3 sophomore offensive linemen Hayden's freshman year. So we weren't great at 5-step protection. So kind of the combination of we're not great pass protectors. Hayden is not incredibly comfortable with our 5-step game at this point. Our pass game was oriented out of the quick game or out of the 3-step game. When Hayden was a junior, we were about 75% concept based or 5-step. Those 3 sophomore linemen are now seniors. We were incredibly good protecting. And Hayden had developed really nicely. And then when Hayden was a senior, we again were about 80% about 80% 5-step in our pass concepts. But we threw it 555 times that year, and we surrendered 6 sacks. So, we graduated those 3 offensive linemen that had an awful lot of experience. Our production in pass protection was the best it's ever been, at least while we've been at Shenandoah. But the missing component there, the thing that people don't either catch on to or they don't admit, is how good Hayden was at realizing, I don't have what I'm looking for. I'm going to throw it away, and I'm going to take 2nd and 10 as opposed to 2nd and 16. So we did surrender 6 sacks in that season, but the number of times he made the decision to just, throw it away and minimize the damage, was substantial and certainly was a huge part, as much as his 44 touchdown passes were. His decisions to throw the ball away and not have a negative play were tremendously important to our success that season.
That's crazy that you guys were number 1 in all of the. That's impressive. Especially out of the big boys, like that's impressive to be number 1 and beat Mike Leach in that category.
It was not. We didn't look at it, as that. Hey, this is us against Washington State, or this is us against Samford. Was really good throwing the ball that year too, down at FCS down in Alabama. It was never a check stats and, hey, how do we do versus them? It's just the way it unfolded. And again, winning trumps everything else. And so what plan, what approach gives us the best chance to have more points at the end of the game than this week's opponent? And, we threw it 555 times, so we were 55 and a half throws a game. And that was the approach most weeks. So, but again, it's about Jimmys and Joes. So we had a really talented quarterback. We had a really good set of receivers, and we were quite skilled up front as well. So
one thing that I respected that you said was when you come into camp, you're going to focus on what can they do, not what can't they do. You're going to say, can they do this? I think that's what we're doing right now, rebuilding a program. I think more coaches need to hear that, of focus on what the kids can do and mold that into your system rather than force them to do something that they can't do and not be successful. So I respect that you said that, because some coaches probably need to hear that more often than not. Because I know plenty of coaches that say they have to do this when they can't do it. So
I do think that is a significantly important piece of our overall philosophy. And we've been running this, or at least I've been running this since 2008, and so we're looking at about 14 or 15 years of notes and diagrams, and we've got a plan A for camp, which is our install. It's probably 10% of what the 3-ring binder holds. And it's just every decision we make, it's focused on, we are very personnel driven. And from that standpoint, if you take something as simple as the shallow concept, there have been seasons where we only ran shallow with one receiver because he was really good at running the shallow route itself. But complementing that, we had a guy that could also run the window route behind it. But he was okay running the shallow, but he was really good at finding that window between the linebackers on the window route. So it's just because somebody else does it, just because Coach Leach does it or Coach Riley at Oklahoma does it, yes, it's a great idea, but if it doesn't fit our guys that are going to be in our locker room, we're not going to spend time on it. And again, the focus is on what can our guys do really well, what are their strengths, and let's build an approach that is supported by their strengths.
Right. We all need to do that. And I think COVID helped us. Like I said earlier, it helped me personally do that. Like, what can they do? What can't they do? And we're going to focus on that. Because I'm the run game coordinator. I focus on what can they do? What can't they do? And we go from there.
Right.
So what is your favorite quick game? And what's your favorite drop back pass?
Well, our day one install is going to be 4 verticals.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what pieces of the puzzle we have or what pieces of the puzzle we're missing. We are all convinced that if you cannot lift the coverage, the windows underneath are going to get awfully small. And so day one, we're going to install the 4 verticals, whether you call it 6, whether you call it go, whatever your terminology is. We're going to stretch the field vertically. That'd be our number one pass, or my favorite pass concept. And then quick game probably would be a slant from number 1 with a wheel route from number 2. It's something we run in the open field. It's something we'll run at the goal line also. And, it kind of fits some coverages no matter where you are on the field. But it seems to be something that our skill set of the guys that we do yield in the recruiting process, it fits them really well. And we usually have outside guys that are good slant runners, and our inside guys are, good wheel runners.
So when you're installing 6, I don't know, but when I watch people talk about it, so I know it's vertical, and then they read what the defenders do, and then they switch it off. How do you teach that to them of what route they're going to run? Are they going to run a hitch? Are they going to run a post, or however they read it? Like, how do you teach that to them? Because that intrigues me. I think a lot of high school coaches don't do it because they don't understand how to teach it. So how would you teach that to kids that are coming into your program? Like, this is how I'm going to teach you to read this.
Really trying to get in my oatmeal now, aren't you? Where we have migrated to is, if we're running 6, our inside guys are hash +2 on the college hashes. So that gets you on the high school hashes. They don't have any adjustments. The quarterback can throw them open. We don't bend our inside receivers versus cover 2. We will throw them open. Okay. The outside guys, they are reading the corner to their side. And if they get a zone turn corner, that's the one they're going to chop off. If they get a man turn corner, they're going to take it through. And that is 6. You start talking about the hitches and the slants. Those are tags. Those are changed routes. And those come from the quarterback based off of coverage. So if, for instance, if we're getting a cover 3 look, and the overhang player, say, is inside leverage of number 2, then he may signal hitch out to the number 1 because he doesn't think the overhang player can get in the throwing lane. And one of the things that I get tired of saying, I know our guys get tired of hearing it, is don't turn down a completion. So if we have delivered the message that we will throw it over your head, and the corners that normally line up at 6 or 7, if they're now lining up at 9, that's the opportunity to throw the hitch underneath them. And so that's 100% quarterback driven. Now, we spend a significant amount of time during the week in the film room, and we're looking for those opportunities. And, and certainly with leverage and with depth, I mean, there's carryover week to week, no matter who the opponent is. But, we're able to learn so much through film study. The one thing we talk about with coverage with the quarterbacks is you don't count on the corners to tell you what the coverage is, because corners can lie. Safeties have to tell the truth. Corners can lie. And, but there may be a guy that, for instance, we'll have a case every year where if a corner, is at its pre-snap stance is at a 45-degree angle, then he's going to be an outside defender, a zone defender. And that same guy, if he squares to the number 1 receiver, it's a man. He's going to play man from that position. So, through the week and through film study, we can get some tales that really help us on game day. Other than, just the normal things that we talk about with, where's the leverage and what's his depth and what's his responsibility from that alignment. So, but film study is so critical to us. Basically, the way we talk about it is we want to have the answers before the question's asked.
Right. That's another thing I like about the air raid is the quarterback can check. You can call a play, but if they see something open, they can do it, like you said, from film study, from practice of understanding what's open. And I feel you can put that in any offense. If you want anything like that, you can put it in if you study it and understand what you're looking for. And I like cross myself. And a coach before put in cross, and they ran smash on the backside of it to occupy that safety. And that might be my favorite way of seeing it. I love the out route, but seeing smash on the backside. He's a run and shoot guy that put this up too. So he put that, and he goes, I'm going to put that safety in a bind. Do you want to go with the corner? And if you go with the corner, this crosser's come right underneath.
Right.
I love it.
That's a really good pairing. I like that. We'll do the exact same thing, and we'll run slot fade on the backside, so it accomplishes the same thing.
Right.
But that's a really good approach there.
And I like play. I don't call offense anymore, but I like to play actioning off of it, because if you can suck that backer down, but then you change the crosser's alignment, because he goes under or over. Well, if he comes down, he can just go underneath again.
Right.
It does, as long as you have a landmark, then it fits pretty well.
That's true.
I just had to ask about 6. We have to ask about it. We're all curious about 6. You hear it all the time, especially with Michael Crabtree. That's the famous play, was running 6 and scores on Texas.
Well, he got his own turn corner.
Yeah. And Graham Harrell put it right where he wasn't going to be.
Yes, he did.
Because Coach Sheffer, I'm on his podcast a lot, and he's a Texas fan, so I have to bring that up every now and then of that play. And he gets a laugh out of it. I make it my background sometimes on here. I put a picture of Michael Crabtree up, and I'm like, that play was 6, right? What do you mean it was 6? It's like, he scored, didn't he? There's your 6 boy.
It certainly was.
What was my other question? Is there any other favorite drop back besides 6? Is there any other ones? And what's a good tag? I know a lot of tags are posts. I've seen a lot of people tag post off a mesh. You go in with many tags for a play, or is it just depending on what you're about to see? Because you said you don't know what you're going to see, but is there tags okay, for these plays, these are only tags that can go with it? Because if you start tagging all over the place, it just grows that playbook, you know. So is it just like we're only going to tag certain things, or is it just wide open? We can tag whatever we want.
How big our menu of plays gets is controlled by what can we practice in one practice. If we come in off of, and we never practice longer than 2 hours, if you eliminate the time that we spend in flex and stretch, in conditioning, and in special teams, I am working with about 75 minutes per day in practice for offense. If we come in after a practice and we didn't get to everything that we're preparing to run, then we're trying to do too much. And so that kind of goes back to the how many tags do you have? We don't tag very much at all.
Okay.
Now, I won't tell you we don't tag anything, but usually the concept will take care of it, and the post-snap route adjustment will take care of it. You know, for instance, you mentioned cross, which is, I would have to say, is my second favorite. You know, we'll do some things off of cross. We read it differently than most everybody else. We read the safety to the crosser's alignment. If he drives on the crosser, we're going to throw the post over his head. And if he's a post defender, then we're going to throw the cross. So that's how we read that. And then the backside of it, where you were talking about smash, or, you know, the out and the fade, or, you know, whether it's slot fade, whatever, that's the pressure. That's the answer if the defense is bringing pressure. But we will also, on the backside of, or on the front side of cross, we'll post curl the number one rather than posting him. And that's a tag that's probably the most run tag in our offense. If you take a 10-game season and you break it down and you ask what was your most run tag for the year, usually it's going to be, we're going to run post curl on the front side of cross.
Yeah. That's another thing. People tag. They have like one tag for each play. When I talk to high school air raid coaches, like, I only tag post on this one. I only tag vertical on this. So they keep it simple, but it's going to look different. So
yes,
when that defensive coordinator is watching it, like, well, one time they did this, but another time they did this.
right.
And like you said, a lot of the reads have been outside backer or the safety. That's really like where you're seeing where they go. And I'm going to bring that tomorrow about safeties are going to tell the truth. I'm telling our defense coordinator that tomorrow, like, always watch them. They'll tell you. That's a good.
Safeties can't lie. Corners, gee whiz, don't trust a corner. But, if they're giving you a too high look pre-snap and one of them's rolling to the middle and they're going to rock the other one down to be a run fit guy, they can't hide it. There's no way they can hide it. No way.
Right. You mentioned you see a lot of different defenses. This might be a weird question. What's the weirdest thing you've seen for people to try to stop you? You've probably seen it all. Like, what's something you just saw and you go, why are they doing this? Or like, yeah, this gave me a real fit without them being better. Because sometimes you just run into a team that's better.
Oh, absolutely. Really, really athletic defensive linemen is what gives us the most fits. If your level one guys are better than our level one guys, it's going to be a long night. It really doesn't matter what else we're doing. Usually when I see something that's unusual, the comment that's made at the time is not fit for radio. But we had an opponent, I think, in 2017 that based out of a two-man front, and they dropped 9. We have on occasion gotten 1 rusher and 10 drops. It gets a little crazy, and there's no way that we can prepare our guys, for that. We've got to spend our time on, on the base stuff. A 4-man front with a 2 linebacker box. So, 3 down with 2 in the box, or 3 down with, they're stacked. So they're playing a 6-man box. We've got to spend our time preparing for that. And then we get the wonky stuff, and it's, it's just, we just make adjustments on the move. And we say, don't worry about it. It's just like this for you, and it's just like this for you. And, talking young players off the ledge is a big part of making in-game adjustments.
No, the stuff not meant for radio, I know what you're saying. I understand what you're getting at. I've been there. I get it. I don't know if I've ever seen a 2 down line and drop back. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. But we don't throw it all the time.
Well, that was the year that we led the country in passing. So
we're seeing a ton of 3-3 or 3-5 now. We're seeing a ton of that because Iowa State made it popular with the one high safety, and then the 3-3s become popular because it messes with angles and it messes with this and 4 eyes. I hate 4 eyes. We've seen a ton of the tight defense come back, that bare front, ton of it, and that causes problems with all that.
Sure it does.
These defense coordinators are getting too smart, and
the chess match continues.
Chess, it does. When I get those 4 eyes, I just say trap him. But that's just me. That's just trap him or full block him. Or read him. When in doubt, read him. You could just,
there you go.
But I'm stupid, but that's what I come up with. Well, Coach, I've taken a lot of your time tonight. I know we've got stuff to do. I know you said you teach. So you gotta oh yeah, that was going to ask you. Like, what's teaching like after football? Like, what do you teach?
In the spring semester, I teach a class to education majors, mostly health and PE majors, about how to teach health in the secondary school. That one's a lot of fun because that's what I did when I was coaching at the high school level. And then I also, you won't keep a straight face on this one. I also teach a class coaching football. It's a 1-hour class, and so our university offers a minor in coaching, and in order to earn your minor in coaching, you have to take 12 1-hour sport classes, how to coach this, and I teach the football class. And we have a lot of fun in that and use a lot of game film from, that I've acquired from different places, whether it's the NFL or, big boy football, or, sometimes we'll even show some of our games, but it gets really interesting. And the neatest experiences with the coaching football class have been where people have come up with ideas that I actually implemented afterwards, because they were really good ideas, and maybe they were missing part of the domino effect of, well, if then, but they own the rights to that idea, and I just, implement it, and, because it fits our guys at the time. So what a neat experience to spend part of your time with that. And usually football players are in the coaching football class, so I get to spend some, time outside of the, the normal coach player arena with those guys. And so that's pretty rewarding.
Oh, don't worry. I went to Eastern Illinois University, and they had a football coaching class with Coach Spoo when he was there, and I took it. Don't worry. I took that, coaching basketball, baseball, and something else. Yeah, I took them. And
there you go.
The football one was really cool. Coach Spoo did it the first part, and then the second part, Dino Babers was there, so he comes in and does it. And
he's done okay.
Yeah, he's done okay. And
he's done okay.
They kind of opened the door up to that offense he brought from Baylor, and you got to see them draw it up, and and each coach came in. It was a 2-day a week, and each coach came in. Each position came in.
Awesome.
It was really cool. So I kept a straight face because I was like, I know what you're talking about. And others may not. I was like, that's cool though. Like I wish every college offered that. I think more people would show up if they did that. Well, Coach, I really appreciate you taking your time to do this. I love talking air raid stuff. That's an offense I get drawn to, the passing concepts. Just when I hear someone talk air raid, my ears perk up. I'm like, yes, what are you talking about? Like, what's going on? And some run stuff, but the pass stuff, I love it. And I have notebooks of just watching stuff and taking notes and getting film, and I try to see. And I think the big guy follows Coach Drew Piscopo. He's the one that I just
Drewby's awesome. I
Yeah.
coached Drew.
Oh, did you in
I
college?
coached Drew in college at Emory and Henry.
Okay. Yeah. Every time he posts something, I draw it up because
He is probably as sharp an air raid guy as he's the one. When I have a question, he's the one I call. And
wow.
I mean, he's pretty sharp.
Yeah,
He's done really well for himself.
he has. Well, Coach, I really appreciate you taking time to do this. I do mean that. Everybody out there listening, thank you so much. Go follow Coach on Twitter. I'll be following Shenandoah because of you and Coach Oakley. He was a great guy to have on. Great guy, very knowledgeable. This is Coach Steve, and we're signing off.